sound is here. All right, let me start this all over again. Welcome to the interview with your girl, Trish M. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Start your watch party, share, like, invite, do all of that other stuff that we are doing, that we need to do to let people know that we are live. I'm live. I'm super excited to share with you today some awesome, juicy, yummy nuggets that the Lord has given me to empower you, to strengthen you, to charge you to the next level. You know, there's so much going on in the world right now. And if we watch the news, we're gonna see so much. If we stay constant with all, and it's funny because we do need to be updated with everything that's going on. But at the same time, we got to make sure that we're not putting in too much of it. And so God was showing me that in this season and in this time, that it is very important that there are 4 things that we gotta have while we're in quarantine, okay? 4 very important things while in quarantine that God was showing me that is imperative for us to have. Number 1, if y'all want to take notes because this is going to be good. Matter of fact, there's a 4-part podcast that I'm going to be doing, but 4 things while in quarantine. God was just showing me, and this is a prophetic message as well, because I believe it's going to hit everybody a little differently, and it's going to speak to where we are. 4 things that we need to have while in quarantine. Number 1, we got to have a healthy spirit. A healthy mind. Number 2. Number 3, we got to have a healthy body. And number 4, we got to have healthy relationships. I'll say that again. 4 things that we got to have. God was showing me in the spirit realm that we got to have these 4 things while in quarantine. Now, this is not an exhaustive list. There are other things you probably can add to your list. You got to have like your Netflix and certain other things in your house that you need to have. But from a prophetic standpoint, God was showing me that these things are going to be very critical in the times that we're in. I'll say it again. A healthy spirit, a healthy mind, a healthy body, and healthy relationships. These are things that are going to take us to the next level despite what's going on around us. Now, we know with the healthy spirit, we know that churches are really being shut down, are very limited, and many of us are being forced to watch church online and different things like that. But, and sometimes we get weary with online. Sometimes we don't show up. Sometimes we say, we're going to watch church today, and we put it off to later on that evening and another day, and that day doesn't happen. And then eventually we get to it when we get to it, or we tune in for a little bit of this, but not much of that. But God is saying we need to be mindful of these things because it's a trick of the enemy. The enemy is trying to weigh us down, distract us, allow us to lose sight and lose focus of the things that God has for us. So we have to be very, very careful in times like this that we do not allow our spirits to get malnourished, that we don't get caught up in the things that are happening in this world. God said we have to make sure that we keep our spirits in check, our mind in check, meaning that you can't be on this emotional roller coaster ride. You got to control your mind because everything starts with a thought. And if our thinking is stinking, our life is going to be stinking. Now, God is saying there are things that we have to be putting in our mind in this season, things that we have to be putting in our bodies and not putting in our bodies. And relationships are key. Now, I know that we're social distancing, but let me tell y'all something. If we're going to come out of this pandemic healthy and strong, we got to have these 4 key areas. Our spirit got to be right. Our mind got to be right. Our body got to be right, because if we ain't healthy, we ain't wealthy. Come on, somebody. Health is wealth. So we got to take care of the temples that God has given us, and we have got to have healthy relationships. Let me tell you something. Now is the time in the season where we have to be connected to people like never before, because healthy relationships, I talked about this last week on the podcast. If we're going to get to the next level, our next level is always connected to a person, our people, circumstances, and different things like that. So you got to make sure that you are maintaining healthy relationships. First, start at home with your family. Then start with people in ministry or in business or wherever it is that you're so closely connected with. Now, what God was giving me to do was to really break down these four areas, spirit, mind, body, and relationships. If we're going to win, I'm going to say that again. If we're going to win in this season, in this pandemic, if we're going to win, we got to have our spirit got to be right. Our mind got to be right. Our body got to be right. I ain't saying you got to be a size 2 or a size 0. I'm saying you just got to be healthy. Okay. You got to be mindful of this stuff, and you got to have people. You got to be connected to the right people. But let's first tackle the spirit, because it's a 4-part teaching, right? So the first thing we're going to talk about on this podcast is how we have to have a healthy spirit. All right. So I'm going to ask you something. Is your spirit healthy? Is your spirit healthy? You know how you've been feeling. If you could describe in one word how a description for your spirit in the last 3 to 4 months, okay? This last quarter, I just say this last quarter, the last 3 months. If you could describe in one word how your spirit has been, describe it. I want you to really think about where you have been at spiritually, because God was showing me how so many of us, how the enemy has just taken us on a path, and it's like a roller coaster ride, or it's like a circle of emotions. And God is saying, I'm trying to bring you back into a place where you feel grounded, where you feel stable. I'm trying to bring you back to a place where it's with me, but you got to first identify where your spirit has been. If you could describe your spirit in this last quarter, the last quarter is just the last 3 months, okay? In this last 3 months, how has your spirit been? Did you know that if your spirit is healthy, that you're better physically, you're better physically, socially, emotionally, if your spirit is in a good place, you won't find yourself on these emotional roller coaster rides. See, that's a sign that, we're discombobulated because we've gotten emotional. We've gotten frustrated. We've gotten anxious. We've got anxiety, stressed out, different things. You're feeling rejection here and there. You're feeling like a failure. You're feeling not good enough, not worthy enough. You're feeling like it ain't going to happen. And so your spirit has been everywhere. But God is saying, no, I'm trying to get you a place where you're spiritually grounded enough so that, because if I can get your spirit right, your mind can get right, your body can get right, and your relationships will be all right. Come on, somebody. So our spirit, this is the foundation of what God is trying to do with us. He's trying to check us before we wreck us. Come on. Check yourself or you wreck yourself. Y'all know I used to say that a lot. But God is trying to get us to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves, because if our spirit is everywhere, you know what the Bible says? It says that we're unstable. We're here, we're there, we're here, we're there, we're here, we're there, we're there, we're up, down, up, down. And so we are unstable, and that's not healthy. And so God is saying we got to find ourselves. We got to find a way back to where God would have us to be. We got to find our way back. And God said, look, he's giving me 14 disciplines or habits. So I'm going to go through these fast because I can't be on here all day, but I'm going to go through these, and y'all can go back and listen to this again, take you some good notes, whatever. But if we're going to get our spirit back to where it needs to be, foundationally in a good spot, then there are 14 things that I'm just going to throw at you. Now, these are not exhausting. Like, this is not the end all say all, but these are things that are going to help you, help me in this season. God is saying in this season, he needs us to go to another level of prayer. Like when you feel anxiety, when you feel stress, when you feel like people are rejecting you or hurting you, or you feel like no one's there for you, you feel alone, you feel like your marriage is a mess, you feel broken, broke, busted, and disgusted at whatever it is. God said, go into a place of prayer, silence, and solitude. See, spending time in God's presence, with or without words, will empower you. It's a privilege and a gift that we have to be able to commune with God in prayer. Sometimes you don't even got to say nothing, okay? You ain't even got to say nothing. It's just all about us getting in God's presence, because God even understands the groans. He understands the moans. He understands the tears that are falling. He understands the stress that that you got without you even saying you're stressed. A lot of times, it looks like my screen went out for a second, but I'm back. But we have to be very, very careful, because sometimes we don't even know when we're in a place like that. We don't even know that stress has become a lifestyle. I don't know who I'm talking to, but a lifestyle of stressed out, a lifestyle of frustration, a lifestyle of just dealing with issues that it's your norm, and you don't even recognize that your spirit is out of whack, because you just keep going through the motions. You keep going through the motions of life, but you're missing. Oh gosh. Hallelujah. Thank you. All right. I think I lost everybody, but I am back. Okay. I don't know what was going on, but listen, y'all. Let me turn my thing on. Okay, it's still out, but I can see. Okay, good. Y'all was hearing me the whole time. All right. Okay, so let me keep going. So we have gotten so comfortable with stress that we don't even recognize that it is stress. We don't even recognize that we are stressed. And God is saying, that's when you know that God is saying that you gotta recognize when the enemy is trying to disrupt your spirit, that you're comfortable with an unhealthy lifestyle. You're comfortable in this roller coaster ride because you've been in it for so long. And I'm just talking about the last 3 months, like this little roller coaster ride of life. And God is trying to tell us that He needs us to get our life. He needs us to figure out what's wrong, what's going on. He needs us to get it together. All right. We cannot continue to allow stress to keep us out of God's presence. We cannot continue to allow frustration to keep us out of God's presence. And this is what God is saying. I miss my intimate time with you. I miss my intimate time with you. So God is saying, get back to the foundation of just spending time with God. So prayer, silence, and solitude is a way that we can get our spirit man back in check. Number two, we have to, when we're in prayer, we have to listen to God, and we have to journal things on a spiritual level. Okay. So when number one, you go into prayer and you go into that silent part of prayer. This is the second part. You got to listen to God, and you got to pay attention to His whispers that's in your heart, that He's reminding you of things. He's showing you things. You got to pay attention to, watch this, how God will speak. He will send an image across the screen of your mind, and you will see a picture of something. You will see a picture of things. You will see a picture of life. You will see pictures of things, or God will remind you of something. God will convict you of something. When you're quiet, God is going to show you in the spirit realm where you're getting off. He's going to show you in the spirit realm how things are not where they need to be. And so you got to listen, and you got to write it down. And also, let me tell y'all something. Here's another level you can take it to. You can begin to write down your prayers, write down your thoughts, write down your questions. I'm going to say this again. Ask God questions. God is waiting on your questions. Like every time I wanted to know what my next move is, I ask God. If I want to know what my best move is, I ask God. And I wrote down in my journal one time, I said, God, where are my divine connections? Where are my open doors? Who has my next level? God, I begin to write down my questions, and I begin to ask God, where they at? Who? Because sometimes in your stillness, in your prayer time, you can write down prayers. You can write down thoughts. You can write letters to God. You can write questions to God. You can write your longing to God, your hopes and your desires. What is that? That's biblical because that's you writing a vision and making it plain. That's you writing down your positions to God and saying, God, my spirit is a little out of whack. So I feel like I need to write some stuff down. I feel like I need to go to another level. Like you're used to me just talking in prayer, but in this time I'm going to write down some questions because that's a vision, because it's going to help me with where I want to go. I'm going to write down these questions, and God, I'm going to be listening because I need you to answer them questions. Now I know you might not answer them right away, but I'm going to always go back to this journal and I'm going to look at those questions. And as I pay attention to the questions, I know eventually you're going to give me an answer. You're going to give me a direction. You're going to give me a confirmation. And so when we do that, we settle our spirit. We calm our spirit from bouncing here, there, and everywhere. God is like saying, yeah, just get down, just sit down and listen, journal, write some stuff down, ask the questions that you need. Just get in a place where you can actually hear God and not you. Because listen, we're so used to hearing our voice, or the voice of the enemy will speak, or the voice of our family, or God said we're so used to listening to all of these voices. He said, I need you in this season like never before to hear my voice. Write this thing down. Write your questions down. Write your thoughts down. Write your frustrations down, because what he's doing is he's realigning your spirit so that you can get back into this horizontal relationship with him, so that your vertical relationship with others can go where it needs to be. So it has to first start here. There has to be a horizontal reconnection. God is saying, I need to reconnect with you. I need to reconnect with you. Number 3, you got to go into private worship and then corporate too. But God said, first, let it start private, because when you begin to praise God, it opens you up to a move of the Holy Spirit. It opens you up for a move of God to come in and just rain down blessings, because God says he inhabits the praises of his people. So when you begin privately to start a worship ceremony, come on somebody, a worship service, a praise party at your house at 2:00 in the afternoon, at 12 o'clock in midnight when ain't nobody around, because he said, if you want this next level in this season, you got to open up for me to move in this next level. So I need to spend some time with you. I need private worship. And when you do it privately, you won't have no problem going corporately with it, but it got to start privately, because the way I'm moving, he said, your praise is going to open up the door for the next move. Okay. Your praise is going to open up the door for the next round of favor. Your praise is going to open up the door for the next breakthrough that's about to pour in. But God is saying you got to position yourself, because we're trying to go somewhere in this season. I don't care what Rona doing out there. I don't care what the world looking like. God is so jealous of us that he looks for this time with us. He's like, you giving Rona more attention than you giving me. And so if we can get in the state of worship and private worship and listening and journaling and questioning God, then God is going to open up the doors of blessings and favor to come in, because he said, I've been waiting to inhabit your praise for a while now. Okay. He said, I've been waiting to inhabit your praise. And let me break this down. It's not that you ain't been praising God. It's just that you've been stagnant in your praise. Your praise ain't went to another level. You haven't really opened. You went through the motions, but that intimacy, that void that you feel, that's where it's coming from, because you ain't really locked in. You ain't really tapped in. You just kind of going through the motions of it, but you're not really in it. Like, okay, I'm a Christian. I got to do this. I'm supposed to do that. But God is saying there's always a next level in him. But the question is, are you ready for it? Number 4, Bible reading. We got to get our spirit. We got to check our spirit. So you got to have a word on the inside of you to check your spirit. When your mind comes into, it starts racing and going all these places. Remember, everything starts with a thought. But God said you got to command those thoughts to come into submission of the word of the Lord. And so when you start to feel weary in your way of doing, you got to remind yourself not to give up, because God said in due time, you're going to reap a harvest. In due time, you're going to reap. So when you feel that weary, you say, okay, Trish, I know you're feeling weary right now, but you need to get through those emotions, because God said, if you could get through those emotions and you could keep going and you could keep pressing, he said, in due time, you're going to reap that harvest. So you got to remind yourself of the word. You got to get that word in you. And when that anxiety and that stress and that weariness come, you got to remind weariness of what the word of the Lord said about you. You got to remind stress what the word of the Lord said about you. And so you got to remind yourself. And that God also said that he said, I'm not a man that I should lie, nor the son of man that I should change my mind. He said, when I speak, I act, and when I make a promise, I fulfill it. So he said, so don't get weary in your well doing, because daughter and sons of God, you're going to reap if you faint not. But if you allow the weariness to make you faint, you're going to miss this mighty move of God that is happening in this now season. There is a mighty move of God that is happening in this now season. But we got to open up our eyes to see, because we're getting bamboozled. We get hoodwinked by the enemy, because he hoodwinking the world, and that spirit of heaviness is coming over to us. We feel it in the spirit realm. If you're a child of God, there's no way you can say you don't feel the heaviness of the world. You don't feel the heaviness that's around you, and it's kind of interfering with your life some kind of way. And so you got to understand that it's in the world, but you can't get caught up in the world. You can't get caught up in the heaviness of the world, because what it does is it translates over you, and it comes on you, and now you feel like you can't carry it. But God said, I didn't give you too much that you can't carry. He said, I put this on you because you're a soldier in my army. You are a prophet. You're a woman of God, a man of God. I have equipped you with everything that you need. So don't get weary, because heaviness is coming on you. Heaviness is all over the world, but you got to combat that spirit with the word. So you got to have a word for the heaviness. You got to have a word for the distractions. You got to have a word for the frustration. And in the midst of that, number 5, you got to keep obeying God's commandments. You got to putting your faith into practice. If God said go, if he told you to go, if he told you to start, if he told you to do, what you doing? Are you barbecuing or meal doing? Because a lot of us will begin to meal do because we feel weary. We feel frustrated. We feel heavy. We feel like we ain't really, we going 2 miles an hour versus somebody else that's going 20 or 100. You know what I'm saying? And so it ain't about that. It's about, are you in alignment with what God told you to do? If God told you to check your attitude, are you in alignment with that? Because you got to put in the work. Because if God told you to check your attitude, check your habits, check how inconsistent you've been, check the people that you've been hanging around. If God is challenging you in this season to check yourself before you wreck yourself in whatever area, you got to open up your ear and say, okay, God, I hear you. I hear you. I got to do what you're telling me to do. I got to hearken unto your voice, and I got to get my will out of the way so I can do your will, because our will put us in a place that God never intended for us to be anyway. And so you can't become a slave to your will unless it correlates to the will of God. A lot of times we become a slave to our very own will. We don't know that our will is putting us in bondage. Our will is putting us in slavery, but God's will take us to freedom, to next level. But a lot of times, because we're so frustrated with what's going on or not going on, we get caught up in our will. And so God is saying to get your spirit back in alignment. He said, I need you to get back in my will. I need you to do what I told you to do 6 months ago. Matter of fact, some of you last year, some of you 5 years ago. Many of you don't understand that now is the perfect time to do what God is telling you to do when everybody else is just is frustrated and the world is going over. God is saying, I'm still looking at you. I'm still waiting on the last thing I told you to do. I'm still waiting on you to go forward in that. Number 6. You got to love on God like never before, and your neighbor. See, right now we got a lot of hate and injustice and racism, and we could look at people a certain kind of way, white people, black people that's for this or for that, not for this, and all kinds of stuff like this. See, what has went into the atmosphere is a spirit of hate, a spirit of division, a spirit of all of that. And so now guess what? Our spirit is out of alignment because we feel a certain way now about white people. We feel a certain way about certain people that ain't saying what we want them to say. Now you got to understand that the spirit of division has come in that form, but also it is manipulated itself because it's coming in your house some kind of way. Because now you frustrated with your neighbor. Your neighbor could be the person in your house. Your neighbor could be your best friend. Your neighbor could be people that you're working with. And so now your spirit is out of whack because there is some type of division that's coming to get y'all off track, to get y'all emotional, to get y'all stirred. And so God is saying, don't forget what I told you to do. Love, love, love. In the midst of chaos, love. Your spirit is frustrating because it's something right now that you're not loving. It could be something, it could be somebody. But God is saying, don't forget my commandment. The first one is to love. The greatest of all commandments is to love. Find a way to love the people that's hurting you. Find a way to love the people that don't look like you. Find a way to love the people that ain't talking what you want to, saying what you want them to say and doing what you want them to do. Because God is saying the enemy is so strategic that he's putting it into play in this way where we're frustrated with everybody right about now. A lot of people are anyway. You know, you just frustrated. Like, girl, don't even come for me. Okay, so listen, find a way to get back to love. Number 7, you got to step out on faith when you're urged to do something because your spirit is out of whack. And I'm gonna tell you, a lot of you are out of whack because you're not stepping out and doing what God told you to do. And so your spirit is just like ping ponging. Your spirit is everywhere. And there's always gonna be some instability in your spirit when you're not doing what God told you to do. Okay, there's always going to be instability in your spirit when you're not doing what God told you to do. So you got to step out on faith and you got to trust that what God told you to do, you got to trust in his guidance because his guidance strengthens your faith. So when you dare to step out on faith, then you learn that God is with you wherever you go, that God is with you wherever you go when you step out on faith. Okay. Number 8. Fasting. If your spirit is out of whack and is out of alignment, you gotta fast. You gotta sacrifice. You gotta do something to center yourself back in the things of God. And I know we don't like fasting, and because we like to eat. Let's not get it twisted. We like our food. We like our junk food. We like our sodas and our coffees and all of that stuff. We like that. And then a lot of us would say, well, you know what? I'm gonna fast from social media. I'm gonna fast from TV or Netflix or whatever. But let me tell y'all something. If we want to get to straight up biblical fasting, fasting is all about doing without something that typically you can't do without. What is that? You can't do without food. You can't do without water. And you're not supposed to do without sex if you're married. So there are 3 main types of fasting in the Bible. If we want to get biblical and lay the foundation, it's either food, water, or sex while in marriage. And even with that, it's got to be consensual. Y'all got to both agree to that. But let's go back to this. So we find different ways of fasting. I'm not saying that God is not honoring that, but if we want to get to a straight up sacrifice, biblical, this is what God loved, this is what God tell me to do when it comes to fasting, you got to give up some food, okay? Because you can't live without food. God is looking for fast from things you can't live without. Listen, y'all can live without Netflix. You can live without Facebook. You can live without Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. Is that really fasting? Because that's like, God's just telling you, you feel like you got to fast from that. God's just telling you, you just spending too much time on it and you distracted, okay? So it's just really about you establishing a system and prioritizing your time when it comes to that. But when it comes to food and water, you can't live without that. You got to have it. And a marriage got to have sex, okay? The Bible even says that. So these are, when we talking about fasting, you got to make sure that if you're really wanting to get your spirit in alignment, take it back to the word of God and fast the way God tells us to fast. So put it down, because when you fast, that means that you're sacrificing unto God. You're laying it on the altar and you're saying, God, take it. I just got to spend this time because my spirit is everywhere right now. My spirit is struggling. My spirit is heavy. My spirit. And he ain't going to tell you to go fast from Netflix, okay? He's going to really tell you to get in his presence and sacrifice the chicken, sacrifice the cow, sacrifice the potato, sacrifice. sacrifice the caffeine. Cause some of us are Coke addicts, like Coca-Cola, like that kind of addict, or coffee addicts and all of that. He's going to tell you to sacrifice all of this stuff so he could get the junk out the trunk and pull the issues out the tissue. Okay. So this is what God is doing. He says, step out and fast. We're not talking about TV, but do a real fast. Number 9, you want to get your spirit back in alignment? Serve somebody. Find somebody to be a blessing to, because God says, give and it shall be given back unto you. So God is going to realign us. He's going to reposition us when we position ourselves to be a blessing, because as we position ourselves to be a blessing, God can't help but pour back into us and be a blessing. So he said, as you serve, as you give, I'm going to give back to you. I'm going to refresh you. I'm going to restore you. I'm going to bring financial increase to you. I'm going to bring restoration to you. But you got to find someone to sow into. You got to find somebody to bless. I always tell people, y'all hear me say this all the time, sow to where you want to go. I'm going to find a marriage. I'm going to find a business. I'm going to find a woman. I'm going to find somebody that I can sow and be a blessing, because I know that, you know what, my spirit needs this right now. It's not about me and my flesh, because my flesh is cool. Like, we talk about flesh all day. Our flesh cool with whatever. We ain't got to do all this extra, because that's extra to our flesh. But our spirit says, no, my spirit is out of whack. I need a blessing from God. I need to get realigned with God. I need to reposition myself. I need to get restored. I need to do all of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a way to be a blessing. All right. So that's serving others. We're almost done. Number 10, you got to get around people, fellowship with people, other believers. And I know we're social distancing. I'm not saying being in each other's face, go to lunch and dinner and all of that stuff, but connections in this season is critical. Like, you got to make sure in this pandemic that you're fellowshipping and connecting with like-minded people. Whether you get on a Zoom call, you do seminars and conferences on Zoom and all of that stuff, like this right here, this podcast, you got to find a way to connect with people that's going to sow into you, that's going to bless you, that's going to empower you, that's going to strengthen you. You got to find those people, because what you need in this season, and you may not even recognize it as much until probably now, but you need the right people to be speaking into your life. You need the right people in your corner. You need the right people that you're fellowshipping with. You need to be texting the right people, calling the right people, Zooming the right people. Now, the wrong people. Now, here's another thing. If you're texting, calling, Zooming the wrong people, then your spirit is still going to be out of whack with God, because it's again coming out of alignment. It's coming out of alignment. And so you have to be very, very careful with that. But you got to make sure that you have the right connections in this season, because the right connections are going to take you to the next level. Number 11, you got to be gracious. Okay. If your spirit is out, then you got to go and in your quiet time, you got to write down gratitudes. I write down at least 5 things every day that I'm grateful for, because it calms my spirit and it takes me to a place of joy. It causes me to remember the good things that God has done for me. It takes me away from stress. I take my mind off of stressful events or things that I got to do all throughout the day and be here, do this. It takes me away from that. And it causes me to focus on God and how good he has been to me. So you got to take out your journal every single day and write, just like me, at least 3 to 5 things. I don't know. You may have 10 to 15, but every day, whatever it is, I just say, come up with the system that's going to help you be consistent in doing it. So for me, 5 to 6 things every day, I'm very consistent in that. I think of things. I think of the joy of the Lord. I think of how he's blessed me. I think of those things and I write them down. I journalize them. That gets my spirit back in alignment with God, because I'm showing gratitude to the King. I'm showing gratitude to the Father. I'm remembering the things that he's done for me every single day. And so that's going to help you. Now, number 12, almost there. You got to be compassionate. You got to show compassion towards others. You got to be empathetic. You got to see, okay, let's say, for example, an ignorant person right now that don't know nothing about nothing. Let's talk about racism. That's a big thing right now. Racism is a big thing. And you got some Caucasian people that talking out of their nose. They don't know what they're saying. But you got to be empathetic. We got to find ways to be empathetic because they don't understand. They don't truly understand. And so compassion still falls in alignment with love. And even the person that you're with or your best friend or whomever it is, they may not understand. They may see things from their own perspective. I'm not saying you got to follow their perspective, but you got to find a way to show compassion for them and to be empathetic to them. So just finding ways to be compassionate, because compassionate shows love and it shows mercy. It shows grace. And those are all the things that God gives us. And so as God gives us all those things, we have to pour those things back. How does that realign us back with God? Because we're doing as the Father does. Anytime we do as the Father does, we get back in alignment with the Father. Number 13, we have spiritual people flourish. You have to find ways to flourish. You have to be intentional about flourishing. You got to be intentional about flourishing in your relationships. You got to be intentional about you flourishing with you. You got to look at yourself every day and say, I'm worthy. I'm worthy. I am this. I am successful. I am great. I am a wife. I'm a wonderful wife. I'm a wonderful mother. In my academy of prophetic people, I have them doing prophetic bubbles. Every week we write in our bubbles things that we are, things that we're believing that we're worthy of having, things that we're speaking to the atmosphere. You got to flourish. And the only way you can flourish, it has to first start with you. It has to be in you that you're going to flourish in this season, no matter what's coming your way. So what do you have to do? You got to speak into your atmosphere. You got to take sticky notes and put on your mirror and say, you are divine. You are worthy. You are great. You do great things for the Father. You got successes all around you. Money is attracted to you. Next level is your portion. There's nothing lacking in your house. You got to talk yourself into becoming one that flourishes no matter what season of life you're in. That means you got to be optimistic. That means you got to open up your mouth and declare purpose in your atmosphere. You got to declare your spouse is great. Your children are great. You are great. You are flourishing like never before in this season. Everybody and everything that you need is around you. Like you don't have lack, you have overflow. See, these are ways that you have to teach you how to flourish. And one of the things you have to do in flourishing is you have to be consistent in that. You got to be consistent with it. And the last thing is spiritual people self-actualize. What do I mean by that? If you're going to get your spirit back in order and in alignment, you got to self-actualize. That means you got to strive towards a better life, and you got to do personal growth. You got to be goal oriented. You got to set goals, and you got to what's short-term goals? You if you've not done this, we got a whole half a year left. That's 2 quarters. You got to sit down and set up a short-term goal, a long-term goal. Short-term goal would be in the next 3 to 4 in the next quarter. In this quarter, let's just say this quarter, that's a short-term goal. A long-term goal would be 3 to 5 years out. Even in the pandemic, are you setting those goals to where you can get to this next level of being who you need to be? Let me tell y'all something. This requires you to focus on your internal values and work on becoming a better you. You got to work on becoming a better you. Now, see, this is where we get caught up a lot of times, because what we do is we focus on somebody else that's not as good as you are not doing as well, and who's getting on your nerves. So we can talk about other people that are not doing it and they're making you mad and they're frustrating you, and you could write a book about them. But this is self-actualization, where you're coming into realization of yourself, your wants, your desires. You're writing a list, you're making it plain, you're setting goals, you're working towards those goals. Every day you're declaring things, you're looking in the mirror, telling yourself that you're worthy, you're speaking life, you're flourishing, and you are really just trusting God. See, this is how we get back in alignment in the spirit realm, so that we can tap into everything that God has for us. Okay, so that's all that I have. I pray that this has been a blessing for you. This is part 1, 4 things while in quarantine. And today was all about a healthy spirit. Today was all about a healthy spirit. We're going to talk about the relationships. We're going to talk about that mind. We're going to talk about all of that another time. But just really, if we set the foundation with our spirit, this is going to take us to another level. All right. So if this bless you, let me know. Say, hey, this was for me. I see this. Kimberly, thank you. She said, this word is for me. Fire. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Yes. Thank you guys for all your comments. Thank you for tuning in into this podcast. It goes live on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and SoundCloud on Monday. But you guys got a chance to watch me live here today. Thank you, Tara. She said this was for me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It really blesses me to know that this was reaching your hearts, and I'm not just speaking into the atmosphere. Thank you, Prophetess Sia. This was good. Thank you, thank you, thank you for encouraging me as I pour out into you to just try to really, not just for you, because I get it first, y'all. And so when I get it, I receive it, and then I pour it out, because I know it wasn't just for me. So I'm working on taking myself to the next level, my house, my family, everything that we're doing. We're going to flourish. My husband has this saying, we're going to thrive in this season and not just survive. So we're thriving, y'all. We're getting to the next level, and it's got to start with our spirit man. Our spirit man has to get back in alignment, with God. Our spirit man has to get back in alignment with God. Stop getting distracted. Stop losing focus because certain things went left field when it should have been right. I'm telling you, God is saying, come back. I need you back in alignment. All right, guys, I love y'all. I really, really appreciate y'all for tuning in. I'm getting ready to close this thing out in the name of Jesus. Please make sure you tune in again. I'll be live next week. I think I have Prophetess Ilka that's going to be with me on next week for the interview. We're going to go live, and we're going to be a blessing. All right. I'll holler at you guys then. Stay safe, be careful, and let's get back in alignment.